another one bites the dust. The door, yeah.
Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust.
Right, go back to base. So. Shivering. Down the block as well. they done the things? These fucking. Oh, it's at the bottom, you fucking idiot. 71. Too far. 58.6. 24.8. 54. 74.8. 54.4. Okay, what is next? 24. 46. River. Sat. What a fucking tit. going F. Fuck, no, Liam. Not your 15, then we get fucking 3 in the fucking paid seats. Oh, I forgot all them papers are worth a fortune. Part of the quest now. Oh no. I'm fucking singing it. What have you done now, Liam? You fucking off. That's not even in the game. Warren can't. Yeah, put the other one. Actually, water, no. Oh, found a close one. Yeah, nothing like it. Water down there. Need to wait something. I'm gonna do a call today. I'd add it. Add every fucking penny of it on different places. Christ. Everything that's our fault. Oh no, look, we've got the house. This one.
I'm very excited to introduce you to Sam Bankman-Fried.
Everybody likes a story about an underdog.
He's the CEO of the cryptocurrency exchange FTX.
The wealthiest person under 30 in the world.
Someone out of the ordinary.
What makes him so different and so rich?
You said you always wanted to get rich, but not for the reasons you might expect.
An unlikely genius who comes once in a lifetime.
Living with roommates, sleeping on a beanbag in his office.
2001, and we're in
Sam is a genius.
a vast
Michael
land
Jordan
of
and
immense
crypto, if you will.
alcohol
Somebody
and
who wants to
gigantic
change the
changes.
world
More
for
specifically,
good.
northeast Victoria,
decided
in a
that
city
he wanted to
called
dedicate his life
Wangaratta. Now,
to
two fun
doing
trivia
good
facts
for the
about
world.
Wangaratta. One, it has a
This
population
is
of
not
around
one of those
29,740 people. And two, it has a funny name. Well, in the city of Wangaratta is the protagonist of this story, a man named Dan Saunders. And thanks to an unbelievable discovery, Dan's life was about to change forever. But hold on a second. How exactly did we get here? A brief history lesson on Dan. So he'd previously worked over in Melbourne at the luxurious Crown Casino, a sprawling casino floor within the Crown Melbourne Resort, featuring 540 tables total, 100 poker tables, and 2,500 poker machines. A job Dan started when he was just 18 years of age. But after being caught swimming in the hotel pool and walking through the casino floor with pints of booze in hand, it was fair to say that his boss didn't have the greatest opinion of him. Well, it was at this job that Dan would meet his future fiancée, who after a while would move away to live closer to family. So, of course, Dan followed, making the big move to Wangaratta. Living just down the road as the two saved for a house together, Dan was your average Aussie fella simply getting on with life. He worked a brief stint at Nando's and then snagged a job working as a barman pulling beers in the West Side Tavern pub. Now, while somewhat ordinary on the surface, this place becomes quite the spot in this story. It's a small local joint, a few regulars, nothing too fancy. It had decent enough business, as it's common knowledge that Aussies need at least one alcoholic beverage a day to survive.
If you're a full-grown Aussie, this is what you'd have for breakfast. BB long neck. Get that up, yeah.
And with that, we're up to date in our story. So it's a regular Tuesday night. Dan was finishing up a tiring shift at the tavern. He mopped the floors, cashed the registers, and locked up as he would at the end of any workday. Now, it wasn't uncommon that after work, Dan would go out drinking with friends, and tonight was no different. So to wind down and recover from the lengthy shift of serving all that booze, Dan and his best mate Mark went out for booze. The two hit the town and found themselves in the Bull's Head Hotel Martini Bar in downtown Wangaratta. Mark started off buying the drinks. He'd waved the first few rounds as the two sat at the bar chatting away. Well, as the night grew later and the two grew slightly drunker, it was Dan's turn to cover the next round. But as he pulled out his wallet, he quickly realised it had run dry. So staggering out of the Bull's Head, Dan did what anybody would do in that scenario and searched around for the nearest ATM to reload his wallet. Wandering around the dark Wangaratta streets for a while, Dan eventually came across a National Australia Bank ATM. The time was 12:11 a.m. He slid in his card and thumped in his 4-digit PIN. Now, Dan knew that his savings account had a whole $3 in it, so that wasn't an option. And as for the joint account that Dan shared with his fiancée, for any money to be taken out of that, the two of them would have to have signed for it, so that wasn't an option either. He did, though, have a credit card account. But even that, Dan knew was around $2,000 in debt on overdraft, close to its limits. So he wasn't even sure if that account would let him withdraw anything. Regardless, he needed cash. The night must go on. So deciding to give it a go, Dan pressed the transfer button and attempted to move a sum of $200 from his credit card account to his savings account. After pressing confirm, he was met with an error message that flashed up on the ATM's display that simply stated, "Transaction cancelled." The machine also refused to show Dan his saving account balance, displaying account balance cannot be displayed at this time, and spat the card back at him. Confused, Dan reinserted his card and attempted to withdraw the $200 out of his savings account anyway, and the machine dispensed the $200. Not really thinking much of it, Dan assumed that despite the error message, the $200 had just transferred out of his credit card account to his savings as normal. So with $200 cash in hand, he made his way back to the Bull's Head for more rounds of drinks. So as the early hours of the morning rolled in, at around 1 a.m, Dan and Mark finally decided to call it a night. Morning. Dan pulled himself up from the bar and started walking home in the pouring rain. Making slow progress, tired, drunk, and wet, something caused Dan to stop in his tracks. It caught his glazed eyes. A bright red glow. It was that same NAB ATM that Dan had withdrawn money from just earlier in the night. And with the ATM being in an alcove and the surrounding pavement being bone dry, Dan decided to seek refuge from the fierce downpour. Dan thought back to earlier in the night with the transaction cancelled message, but the money still dispensing regardless. He thought, hell, I'll give it another go. He took out his card and inserted it. Now the machine still wouldn't display Dan's saving account balance, but this was expected. So again, Dan did the same. He attempted to transfer $200 from his credit card account to his savings account. Transaction cancelled, and his card was spat back out. The card goes back in. Dan tries to withdraw the $200 from his savings, and it worked. The machine dispensed the $200 just like earlier. He tried again with $400 this time. Transaction cancelled. Card spat out. Card goes back in, and the money dispenses. Then again, $600, $800. Each time, transaction cancelled, but the money kept coming. Dan was baffled. He stood there with nearly $2,000 in cash. There was no way that Dan's credit card account, that was already $2,000 in debt, was approving these transactions. But still somewhat drunk and exhausted, with a long walk ahead of him, he shoved the notes into his wallet and trudged home, crawled into bed, and passed out. It's the next morning. Dan groggily comes round, tired and slightly hungover. He assumes the whole ATM and money withdrawal the night before was simply a dream, but as he picked up his wallet from his side table, crammed with nearly $2,000 in cash, it became very real. Questions started to swirl around Dan's head, but he quite quickly shrugged them off, assuming he'd just have to simply pay all the money back. So he shoved his wallet in his pocket and headed to the tavern for a 3 PM shift. Well, on the way there, Dan thought to himself, well, rather than just pay it back right away, I guess whilst I've got the cash, I might as well use it, then just simply pay it back at another time. So he did just that. Over the course of the next couple of days, Dan bought a new fridge for his kitchen and numerous rounds of drinks at the bar. And as he stood, looking down at the remaining cash from the night at the Bull's Head, he decided the best option was to gamble it. That's genius, he thought. If he won, he could pay back the $2,000 and still have some to keep for himself. Now you see, the Westside Tavern featured a TAB, which is Australia's biggest sports betting website. So regulars could go into the tavern and sports bet whilst they were drinking, which is arguably the most Australian thing I have ever heard. So after work, as the tavern closed, Dan would punt the remaining money he had. After a few hours of gambling, Dan had lost. He'd lost it all. Feeling defeated and down on his luck, Dan decided to call NAB phone banking to check his balance. And as he expected, his savings account was down minus $1,997 from all the withdrawals that he'd made. But weirdly, when Dan got a statement on his credit card, there was no record of the transfers Dan had made from his credit to his savings at all. Dan could not stop thinking about the night after the Bull's Head. The fact he could even take a penny out of his surely overdrawn credit account. The transaction cancelled message. Why were the transfers that Dan had made between his accounts not showing up on his credit card bank statement? Dan slowly started to piece a theory together in his head, but he had to be sure. He needed to try it again. So a couple of days later, around midnight, Dan locked up the tavern for the night and started walking home. There it was, the elusive NAB ATM. Dan's curiosity took the better of him once more. Now the machine actually allowed Dan to see his savings account balance this time. Of course, minus $1,997. So Dan tried something. He attempted to transfer $1,000 from his credit card account to his savings account. And again, that error message that Dan knew too well. Transaction cancelled. But when Dan checked his saving account balance, it was minus $997. So he frantically transferred another $1,000 from his credit to his savings. Transaction cancelled. But the balance on his savings account went back up to $3. Dan had paid off his debt in a matter of seconds. It was clear that this wasn't supposed to be happening. Now, Dan knew the ATM withdrawal limit was $1,000 on each card, so he took things slightly further. He transferred yet another $2,000 and withdrew the $2,000 total in cash, $1,000 off each card, and crammed the notes into his wallet. Dan was really starting to piece things together now, noticing patterns from his various ATM trips. His theory grew. So the next day, Dan became obsessed with checking his bank balance, calls after calls to NAB phone banking to check the totals, and he plotted his results. In the morning, saving account balance, $3, with no record of the transfers on his credit card statement at all. 11 PM, the same. Saving account balance, $3. Still no record of the transfers on his credit card statement. 1 AM, the same. $3 in the savings account, and no record of the transfers on the credit card statement. So after a full day of checking his balance with no change, Dan decides to call it a night. Well, when he awoke at around 6 AM, Dan sat up in bed and thought hell, and he called NAB phone banking once more. Saving account balance, minus $3,997. All the transactions that Dan had made had caught up and reversed, but there was still no record of the transfers on his credit card statement at all. And with that, Dan's theory was correct. What exactly was happening? What was Dan's theory? Well, what Dan had worked out after repeated calls to phone banking to check his statements at different times of the day and his numerous trips to the ATM was between 12 and 1 AM, the NAB ATMs would go into a status called standby mode. And whilst in this mode, the NAB banking network would just seemingly disconnect from their ATMs. This meant that in short, the network couldn't actually see Dan's credit card balance and would just auto-approve whatever transfer amount Dan would key in, allowing him to move up to 6 figures at a time from his credit card account to his savings account and spend it as normal. All whilst the ATMs were in this sort of limbo period. And despite the error message, the money would transfer, but these transfers wouldn't show up on Dan's credit card statement. Although, here's the kicker. Roughly 24 hours after the payments are made, around 3 to 5 a.m. the next day, the NAB network would catch up, realise the false transactions, and auto-reverse the transactions out of Dan's savings account, putting his account in debt. But Dan had a solution. All he had to do was just stay ahead of the bank. So he could transfer an amount, spend that money on his card as normal, then the next night, just a couple hours before the payments reverse, Dan goes to the NAB ATM and just simply transfers double the last amount to keep the balance topped up. So when the network would catch up and the transaction would reverse, he still had cash in there, like a buffer, stopping the account going into debt and the bank being alerted. And he just had to keep that loop up, seemingly creating cash from nowhere. It was genius. We paused this showing to take a small break. It's time for the ads. Oh, let's just get into that. Let's see what else is on, shall we? This week on the History Channel, the age-old strategy of War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. Yes, exactly, Richard. Every vehicle in the War Thunder range is incredibly detailed and modelled down to their individual components. Yes, Jezza, and that offers a highly immersive combat experience. Fired on the spot for the two of them. And turned to Dan. A smile grew across his face. God, Dan. He won big on a bet, and using the money, the group of them could bet on horses and make more cash. So within a few minutes, Dan had built a makeshift gambling posse. The group would even bond over leaving $10 notes on the floor and watching people find them, just for the fun of it. So with the team assembled, the plan kicked into motion. Each night, Dan would head out in that 12 to 1 a.m. time slot, order a taxi, and transfer money from his credit card account to his savings account. Over the span of a week, Dan had transferred and spent nearly $20,000. He was buying round after round at the bar. He gave his fiancée $1,000, and then each night, after his shift, the group would be putting bets on horses using Dan's money. Now, whilst the gang had a few small wins here and there, it was a fast downward spiral. Dan was losing big. One Wednesday night, the Westside Tavern was dead empty. It was just Dan and Mark sat at the bar betting on racing, and Dan was $40,000 in the hole, hopelessly trying to win it all back. At points throughout the week, Dan was even using the TAB whilst he was on shift, working behind the bar. And of course, whenever he'd go down, one trip to the ATM during the early hours of the morning, and he was back up again. It was fair to say that this plan that Dan had designed wasn't exactly going smoothly, but things would get far worse. One morning, Dan awoke to a phone call from his boss, Paul, the owner of the Westside Tavern. He told Dan he needed to come into work early and come straight into the office. Well, as Dan stepped through the door, there stood Paul, on a conference call to the TAB executives. They informed Dan that they'd been tracking his spending habits through the TAB system in the tavern. Well, shit. You see, Dan and Mark had gambled more money in a single night than the tavern TAB would pull in an entire month. So understandably, they'd noticed a slight spike on their charts. Dan was instantly fired on the spot and was told he couldn't work anywhere with the TAB for at least a year. Within a morning, Dan had lost his job. But it didn't stop there. The news of Dan's firing spread like wildfire around the tavern. All the regulars were talking about it. And with Wangaratta not being the biggest city, within a couple of hours, Dan's fiancée had heard the news, along with the eye-watering amounts that had left Dan's bank account. She assumed he was performing some illegal activity to obtain the money he was gambling with, so without any chance of explanation, she broke up with him via text. "I'm not sure what you're into. I want no part of it. It's done." This hit Dan hard. In the space of a day, he'd lost his job and his fiancée of 4 years. The two were saving for a house together. They were engaged. Dan was heartbroken. He pretty quickly decided he had no real reason to stay in Wangaratta. So, he called Mark, and for the first time, revealed the glitch. Now Mark, being a pretty laid-back guy, wasn't too baffled with the whole thing. He sort of took it in a way of, "Okay, Dan, that's your thing. I don't want anything to do with it, but I'll have beers with you whenever you like." And with Mark having a few days off, Dan thought screw it and booked a train to Melbourne for the two of them in an attempt to distract himself, to take his mind off everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. The train screeched into Melbourne in the dead of night, and the two wandered the streets for a while, eventually reaching the Crown Plaza Hotel. They hesitantly knocked on the door, and a bouncer reared his head. He took one look at the two of them that appeared tired and slightly dishevelled and claimed the place was full. But Dan and Mark soldiered on and found themselves in the Crown Towers hotel lobby. Dan walked up to the desk and booked a twin room for Mark and himself, and boy was it snazzy. It was a taste of luxury for the two of them. Mark picked up a small remote he found on the side table, clicked the button, and watched the automatic blinds slide up to reveal the incredible views of Melbourne. Mark turned to Dan. A smile grew across his face. "God, Dan, can you imagine this being your life, mate?" Dan paused, remembering everything that had happened in the past couple of weeks. The glitch, the gambling, losing his job, the breakup. He looked down at the bank card that he used to purchase the very room they stood in. He looked Mark in the eyes and said, "Why couldn't it be?" It was here that something within Dan changed. He'd gotten a taste of what big money could do. He started to view the glitch as a sort of gift. He'd been granted endless funds to play around with, to make memories with. So, still staying in a hotel room above the Crown Plaza, the two did their favourite thing. They gambled. A lot. I mean, they were losing most nights, but who cared? The two lived to gamble each night, throwing thousands of dollars on roulette tables or any machines that they could get their hands on. And of course, each night, Dan was making a trip to the ATM to keep his account. Topped up. Now, alongside the original glitch, Dan had actually discovered a further loophole that allowed him to transfer money from his credit card account to his credit card account. Then he could use his internet banking to shift huge sums of cash between his accounts, then spend the cash as normal. But what's most important to understand about this extra loophole is that not only did it allow Dan to take money out of the original ATM in Wangaratta, but from any NAB ATM anywhere in Australia. Sadly, after a few days, the casino binge eventually came to an end, as Mark had to head back to Wangaratta for work, which left Dan sitting in a luxury Crown hotel room, alone. But not for long. He made a call to an old friend from his casino job. Now, this friend's identity isn't public, so we'll call him Richard. Listen, Richard, mate, drop whatever you're doing. Come down to the Crown Towers. I'll buy the beers. Just come and visit. Richard was understandably confused, but he thought, hey, Dan, if you're buying the beers, mate, I'll be right down. So the two meet in the hotel bar later that night. Richard, listen, I've checked you into my hotel room. At midnight, I want to show you something. Admittedly slightly puzzled, Richard goes along with it. So they drop his bags off in the hotel room, and as the clock strikes midnight, Dan takes Richard across the river to the closest NAB ATM. Dan inserts his card as Richard looks over his shoulder. Saving account balance, $7,000. Wow, Dan, good going, mate. $7,000. That's no, watch. Dan interrupts. He transfers $50,000. Transaction cancelled. Oh, Dan, look, mate, there's an error message on the screen. Wait, Dan says. Saving account balance, $57,000. Richard was mind blown. Do you want me to do it again? Dan asks. Yeah, do it again, Richard says. $50,000 more. Transaction cancelled. Saving account balance, $107,000. Somebody had finally bared witness to the glitch in person with their own eyes. So the two race back up to the hotel room, and Dan sits Richard down. Richard, listen. We're above the Crown Casino. Let's get gambling. I'm in a big hole. I need to win this money back. In fact, Dan had actually won $40,000 on a betting site earlier that day, but when he went to bet $10K more, the site called him directly and told him that because he'd won so much, his max bet was capped to only $1,000.
Crackers, cheese, bit of ham. Very nice.
Do you like crackers, Gary?
I love a cheese board, like a ploughman's lunch. If you gave me a glass of red wine.
When he came back to him?
No, but I thought he was offside on the one through. I think he gave offside.
No,
I know he wasn't offside, but I thought it was a penalty. They don't think it was a penalty, Konza?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
He's tackled him like.
And these are all food.
So that's what I've been the benefit of, you know.
That's amazing. Bobby, have a little cook.
The hot dogs.
Right,
it was too hot.
Right, it was 2 hot dogs, like sweaty old sausages, and it was mac and cheese. That was it.
Beautiful. Beautiful onions, mustard, ketchup. I am a simple man.
Do you know that
I'm a 442 man. No, keep it simple.
I don't like.
They all like your these are all food experts. Hot dog.
No, but Roy, I don't like the sort of what I call them tin hot dogs. You like tin, like the sort of ones that are like they're almost orange, aren't they? They're orange. They're the colour of that lamp thing behind you. I just like a proper, proper sausage. Okay, now like do you like?
You are what you eat. Fucking sausage. Do you like his T-shirt, the red card?
He likes my T-shirt.
Yeah,
it's from the same company, you know, with a.
Yeah. Hey, the little yellow card. Yeah, the yellow. The red is nicer.
Yeah, the little red card. It's nice. There's no wonder she's doing well.
Miles, come.
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
How you doing?
Okay, nice to meet you. Hey, okay, nice to meet you. Okay.
Nice to see you. Hiya, nice to see you.
How are you?
Lovely to meet you.
Are you gonna join us for 5 minutes? Come on, join us for 5 minutes. You might. Come on.
Have a seat. Where are you going to the main chair? Go on the main chair.
What's it, Miles?
We're lucky we didn't.
Wait, what?
Call me Jill.
Call you Jill? Yes, you were Jill.
What are you sitting out there for? No, don't do the barber thing with her. No, come sit here, Miles.
No, the barber. You have a little chat with for 5 minutes.
What are you going to chat to my cousin about?
Life, you.
Oh,
What's he like? He's beautiful. He's beautiful. Just that's what we think of him as well. He's beautiful, eh?
On the inside and the outside.
Yeah. Give us some examples of how beautiful he is.
Don't give her no examples.
Speaking of the Yankees.
Yeah.
Well, we've just been speaking about
Who's
the
speaking
Yankees.
of the Yankees?
I did, don't believe me, you had 5 hot dogs a day.
I didn't have 5 hot dogs. I didn't have 5 hot dogs. I don't even like hot dogs. I don't like hot dogs.
Ian, be quiet for 1 second. We've got important things to say. Tell us how beautiful Ian is. Give us some examples of how beautiful Ian is.
He's kind of got these two levels where sometimes he kind of he does his character thing as if he wouldn't take him seriously, but he's got a very high level of ethic and discipline in the way he wants to run his life. So he's very principled, but on a personal level, I'm a doctor, I have a PhD, but I wouldn't have that if I hadn't had his support.
Fantastic.
How's he supported you? Tell me how he supported you.
No, don't go deep. Don't go deep.
Yeah, it's beautiful, this.
Oh,
This is the real Ian. Not this laughing thing that walks in every single week.
It comes in late. Right.
No, he's got this, he really respects people that want to push themselves. He doesn't have, I would say, much tolerance for people who don't want to try.
Yeah.
But he has very high support for people that want to push and really try to grow themselves.
Yeah.
So
She's the most intelligent in our family. She's got an amazing story. She watches the overlap religiously.
That's good.
yeah,
You watch it live
I
today.
love it. I love it. It's the thing that the overlaps taught me, because this is the beautiful thing about this podcast, is that you discuss football, but with your guests, you have this personal touch, so that you actually learn some very powerful things, like the Manchester United footballer who has the son.
Scholes'
Scores. Yeah, goals. That was amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
was amazing.
I've been in tears so many times. Yeah. And you asked some very excellent questions. Really, very, very good at asking questions.
Oh, thank
the
you.
right questions. And you learned.
And you.
No, I've learned the sort of you learn as a football fan that you can be too opinionated. You don't know these people. I didn't know you, but you're very human. you're and quite a vulnerable person.
Oh gosh, Marley, what you got?
Oh my goodness.
So I've really and so the whole different personalities, they work, and Jill, to have this female voice as well.
Yeah,
it's
she's coming
important.
this week. We miss her.
Yeah,
She's here.
I was thinking, he must have been offside. And I went to Stuart afterwards. I said, Stuart, was that offside? And he showed me, it's miles offside.
He was?
He was miles onside.
Oh, onside, yeah.
So when,
that's why I thought
The first ball you're talking about, true.
so the first ball through, he's onside. So I'm thinking, when Ezri comes in like that, I'm thinking, oh my God, if they look at that, we're in trouble.
Right, I thought it was like such a certain definite penalty.
Jordan Pickford came out.
He
missed the whole ball.
But I didn't think that
didn't
one
even go
was.
for the ball.
Yeah, no, I didn't think that one was me.
Yeah, but he clattered into the guy. I'm thinking, again, it was one of those...
If the lad had got maybe a little touch on the ball and then
he would have been off.
Yeah.
He would have been off, because I was really worried about that.
The Konza one I thought was 100% a penalty, but look at... I think so. Well, Joseph...
Honestly, Roy, you need to see it again,
I have seen
Roy.
it. And I was looking good. Yeah, the way he just lunged in with his 2 feet. Yeah, I did.
Honestly, I think we got away with one there. And that's why when you look at the game and even the substitution of taking Jude off, I'm not sure I would have done that.
But Kane then has a chance, right?
Kane's chance I was very surprised with, because he really he levered at it.
What's he done there, right?
Well, I think that because there's the defender's coming in really quick, so he's trying to get the shot off quickly with power.